So this week we're talking about demonstrative pronouns. A pronoun is a word that replaces a word. It can also replace an idea, a phrase, sentence, or even sometimes a group of sentences. And there's all kinds of pronouns. There's personal pronouns, there's relative pronouns, there's demonstrative pronouns. And what makes the demonstrative pronoun unique is that it can show proximity. So a demonstrative pronoun would be a word like these. If we say, all of these categories, and you think about the word, it shows that it's close. It could be close in the context. In other words, maybe we just finished, this is more likely in this context, we just finished talking about certain kinds of categories. We say all of these categories. It could be spatial, not just contextual, it could be spatial. If I said, this cup on the table here, this cup is mine. Well, that has to do with a spatial proximity. But this is the basic function of a demonstrative pronoun. It shows proximity. And these demonstratives are words like this or that. This would be the closer proximity. That would be something a little further away. And if it was plural, it would be these or those. Demonstrative pronouns refer to things or people that are already mentioned in the context. Most often in Greek, a demonstrative pronoun is going to refer to a thing, but very often it's used as a personal pronoun. So it refers to people. Here are all the forms of the word in Greek that means this, and its lexical form is hutos, and the word for that is ekenos. So hutos is the word that shows a closer proximity, whether it be a spatial proximity or a contextual proximity, and then ekenos is the word that shows proximity that's a little further away. It means that. And of course they can be singular or plural. And since Greek is pretty highly declined, that's why there's 24 forms of each word. Again, these 24 forms don't need to discourage or intimidate us at all as long as we've memorized our 24 case endings. Now there's a little more with the third declension, but these are going to follow the first and second declension case patterns. So we've got hutos and we've got ekenos. One thing I want to mention, if we'll focus up on the top box of the forms of hutos, most of the forms start with tau, and that's going to help us. Let me just go ahead and highlight. Okay, there's a few forms that don't. You've got hutos and haute up in the singular nominative row, and then in the plural we've got hutoi and haute. These start with a rough breather and a circumflex, and they look a lot like the personal pronouns, don't they? Do you remember the personal pronoun autos? They're really close. The only difference is, in the feminine at least, the only difference in form is the rough breather, because they actually have the same letters as the personal pronoun. They're just a little different because they have the rough breather. The personal pronoun, autos, aute, auta, those will never have the rough breather. So these are characterized, hutos is characterized by the rough breather and the circumflex in these four nominative forms. But in all the other forms, it starts with the tau. So the tau is going to help us distinguish the demonstrative pronoun from the personal pronoun autos. In the neuter column, we can notice, and we're used to seeing this, at least we should be kind of used to seeing this, is that the nominative and accusative share the same form. We've got tuta, tuta, tauta, tauta. And the same is true down in ekenos. We've got the nominative singular neuter would be ekena, and the accusative would be ekena. If it was plural, it'd be ekena with an alpha, and ekena, an accusative, with an alpha. So these are going to share the same form. Again, the question might arise, well, if the nominative and the accusative share the same form, how will we know how to translate it? It'll always be the context. The context will 99.9% of the time clarify how the word is being used. The genitive and dative share the same form. We've seen this with other adjectives. We've seen it with the article and other pronouns. And so that's something that will help us with the memorization. Well, the genitive and dative share the same form. And the same is true for the plural. You have the feminine dative plural form. That's a little different. It has the alpha instead of the omicron. But the rest share the same form. And the same is true down in ekenos. You've got ekenu and ekeno in the genitive and dative respectively for both the masculine and the neuter forms. And down in the plural, the same is true. These are the forms that overlap. And so this is something when we think about all of the forms something that can help us with just remembering the case endings. We saw this with the article, and it's also true with the personal pronoun and the relative pronoun. And that is that in the neuter column, the nominative and accusative singular actually do not end with the nu. The nouns will. For instance, ergon is a neuter noun, and it ends with a nu in the nominative and in the accusative singular, ergon. But this just is tutal. It doesn't end with a nu. And that's a bit exceptional, but we've already seen it happen, and just good to keep in mind that it happens with the demonstrative pronoun too. Same is true down in ekenos. It doesn't end with the neuter forms, singular forms do not end with nu as we might expect to see. They're just going to end with the omicron. So this demonstrative pronoun can function like an attributive. We talked about the attributive formation in our chapter on adjectives. So the attributive generally for an adjective is when we would say something like the good man instead of the man is good. The attributive in English is generally the adjective that comes right before the noun that it's modifying. So what's kind of curious about the demonstrative pronoun is when it's functioning like an attributive, in other words, this man, instead of this is the man, this man, it'll generally occur in the predicate position. And that's a little strange because the predicate position, as we talked about in the article, is generally when the noun has the article and the adjective doesn't. And it's generally for adjectives, it's not translated as an attributive adjective. We generally have to provide the keyword is. So this is what we're saying. If we saw a construction like ha anthropos agathos, okay, in that situation, the noun has the article and the adjective doesn't, we would say the man is good. And the same is true for the construction below it. Agathos ha anthropos. It's all right, well, the noun, which is anthropos, it has the article. The adjective, agathos, doesn't. So it's predicate, the man is good. Well, if you plug in hutos instead of an adjective like agathos, and by the way, the demonstrative pronoun can be an adjective, you know, this man, or this cup, or those computers, those are all adjectives. So if it's in the predicate position, if you look at this construction, anthropos has the article, in this case the demonstrative, which is functioning like an adjective, doesn't, it'd actually be translated this man as an attributive. So that's a little bit of a reversal. When you see the demonstrative pronoun in the predicate position, it's actually translated like an attributive adjective. And that might be a little confusing, but let's just keep this in mind. Generally, when the demonstrative appears with a noun, it's functioning like an attributive adjective. Every once in a while, maybe it functions like a predicate, but almost always it's going to be functioning like an attributive adjective. And this demonstrative can also function like a substantive. It's when it's standing all alone. And here's an example. In Greek, this is a well-known verse. Zetete de proton ten basilean tu theu, kai ten dekaesunein avtu, kai tauta panta prastethesetai humin. This would be translated, but seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. And so tauta in context has been emboldened, and down in our English translation, this would be translated these. This is actually from hutos, and it is neuter, plural. And here it's standing all by itself. It does have an adjective, panta, which comes from pas pasapan. Hopefully you recognize that. That would be translated all. But then tauta is these. And in our context, we have to provide the understood pronoun, these things. Besides the modifier, panta, that occurs with tauta, it's standing all by itself. And so we would say all these things. And like I said, we often have to provide the understood noun or pronoun when it's functioning substantively. Many times we're going to see this demonstrative pronoun functioning like a personal pronoun. In this case, hati chan epistelen ekenos tuto humes u pistuete. So a personal pronoun is he, she, or it. And this could be translated because hon, there's a relative pronoun, he, whom. Because he, whom, we've got epistelen, which means sent. And then we've got the subject, ekenos, which comes next. literally, because he whom that or that one sent. Okay, so akenos in context here is talking about the Father. He whom he sent. That one, if we say translated that one, okay, maybe, but it sounds a little awkward in English. What's happening here is the demonstrative is functioning like a personal pronoun. So we'll just translate it that way. Because he whom he sent, and then we've got tuto. So this is from hutos, and it's in the dative singular. And in this case, we are going to want to keep the prepositional idea, which in this case is in, because the verb is believe. Generally, if you believe on or in somebody, it's you believe in it. And so we'll include that understood prepositional idea in the translation. We'd go, in him, or literally tuto. Okay, well, this is from hutos, so that means this. But we're not going to say in this one. We could, but it sounds a little awkward. It's just a personal pronoun. In him, you do not believe. So what we're saying is the demonstratives, in this case, both of them appear. Ekenos and tuto. We're just going to translate them like personal pronouns. Because he whom he sent, in him, you do not believe. And so this demonstrative pronoun can show proximity. Generally, it's contextual. Sometimes it will be spatial. It can function like an adjective, normally occurring in the predicate position. And it can also function like a personal pronoun.